Hey everyone, welcome. This is Nick. I'm here to talk about heavy work. This is great if you have a high energy child at home or a kid who struggles with big feelings, and you're in the right place. So, today we're going to talk about a concept that I use a lot at the school and recommend to teachers, which is called heavy work, and hopefully go over some ways you can use movement at home to help kids maintain calm and process their emotions and get energy out. So, to understand, movement and emotion, they're very connected, especially in children, even in adults. And a lot of times, they don't have the verbal processing to be able to calm themselves through verbal prompts or even through intellectualizing like adults do. So, movement is key in a lot of ways for them to emotionally regulate, right? And so, really, to understand why heavy work is so magical, we need to understand that the connection between movement and emotion is in the brain. That, for instance, have you noticed that telling your child to calm down or use their words when they're upset a lot of times doesn't work? Well, that's because that verbal part of their brain isn't necessarily developed. Now, movement as emotional regulation, that does work, especially for kids who are between, really infants to um, teenagers before that logical verbal part of their brain is developed, right? So, like, adults can usually talk through their feelings. Younger children can't always do it unless they're calm. They process emotions through their bodies, and this is long before they have a vocabulary on how to explain it, right? So, when a child is dysregulated, meaning they're experiencing a tantrum, extreme hyperactivity, or anxiety, their th- their thinking brain goes offline. So, verbal reasoning goes out of the window, and that's really it. Like, they can't engage with you verbally, but movement and touch can act as an emotional bridge, right? So when they're stressed, their bodies release cortisol. Rhythmic physical movement helps them actively process and flush out those stress hormones and the cortisol in their blood, restoring a balance to the nervous system. So there is a biological like imperative to add movement here. So what does the research say? Really, this isn't just a theory, it's backed by brain science. You can listen to a lot of podcasts about this. There's plenty of studies you can look up about it. But essentially, what it is distilled down to is that research shows that targeted physical activity actively increases the neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin, so the feel good chemicals that are essential for mood regulation and focus, right? Like those two things, like really modulate like our ability to focus and our ability to regulate our own moods. Furthermore, clinical studies, which means like in practice, not just looking at chemicals in a lab, um, show something called proprioceptive input, which is essentially deep physical pressure directly reduces the arousal of the nervous system. So, arousal of nervous system leads to fight or flight or shutting down, and giving kids, and I mean honestly people, the ability to experience deep physical pressure through pushing or being pushed can take kids out of that fight or flight state, right? And return them to like the what they call the rest and digest, so like a regulated state of the nervous system. Movement, even in adults, can help you regulate 3 times faster than talking it out or quote using your words, right? It's a powerful statistic to keep in mind, especially with children, when they're guided, and that's the key word, guided, to do targeted physical activity or what they call heavy work again, can return them to a calm baseline up to 3 times faster than kids who are told to sit still or use their words or try to breathe, right? Those more mindful techniques, depending on the kid's personality, right? Like if they can do that and have that skill, sure. But like getting them to move or do heavy work really can help regulate faster than being told to sit there and kind of like sit through their emotions, right? Sitting still honestly requires a lot of cognitive control, which is why young kids at the ECE age don't really have access to it, especially when they're really upset. So moving with purpose gives them, that energy and a safe place to go. So essentially, so distill it down, like what even is heavy work, right? OTs call it that. And this is OT's bread and butter, not necessarily like mental health counselor stuff. So most of the stuff I'm learning from people in the OT type side of therapy, right? So heavy work is, comes from the fact that we know movement is good, just like I was explaining before, but not all movement is created equal when it comes to calming the brain. So that's the core of the presentation today, right? So heavy work, let's talk about what it is and why it works. So we all have senses, right? And so we all know the five senses, but there's one, I don't know if it's hidden, but it's a sense that is called proprioception. We all know the five main senses, but we also have a hidden one. It's not really hidden anymore, but like it didn't have a lot of research on it, called proprioception. Proprioception is our bodily sense of spatial awareness around us. And we feel it through receptors in our muscles and joints, right? So heavy work is really about any activity that pushes or pulls against the body, providing intense proprioceptive input. Like think of physical pressure as a literal reset button for overwhelmed nervous system, right? It sends deep, organizing, calming messages straight to the brain. So heavy work at school, a lot of it comes naturally through recess and play, and how we can use it here is, when we see like a kid pushing something on the playground or pushing something in the classroom, lifting something heavy, right? Or carrying a basket of toys or wooden blocks that are heavy, and even hanging from playground equipment. Those really they're playing, but they're not just playing, right? Like kids are actually stimulating their body to regulate better, especially when they come back from an environment like recess into the classroom, right? They're using these sensory inputs to regulate themselves to be able to focus later for learning, right? Like that's why recess is so important, and having unstructured time to play and engage that part of their body helps them come back to the class and be a better learner. So at school, like even in a targeted sense, like if you have a kid who's got extra energy, then you can do things like say, hey, can you go grab that thing of blocks and bring it to me? Or help me push this, help me bring this cart out to the gym class, right? Like you can engage that in a targeted way. That's fun for the kids, and that's what we try to do at school. So at home, it's easy to replicate, right? Like you don't need any fancy equipment, you don't need a gym, you don't need any of that stuff, right? You can also, if you're deliberate, build in these movement type activities into your daily routines, especially before challenging transitions like sitting down for dinner, leaving for school, bedtime, right? You can have what they call in OT a proactive sensory diet, right? And this will keep your child's nervous system hopefully running smooth. So what works best at home? One of the biggest things is chores, right? That's the magic of chores, I think, got lost generationally. A lot of the ways we do a lot for our kids is like, especially millennials and even Gen X and soon to be Gen Z parents, right? We tend to step in for them and don't have a lot of chores for them, but chores actually help them regulate, especially if they're fun, right? Like pushing a vacuum for a kid in the ECE age is pretty fun. And doing things like, being able to lift a watering can or carry a laundry basket or push a laundry basket down a hallway, like is a fun challenge for kids, right? And it helps them feel capable and it builds resilience in them as well as the regulation activity of the heavy work in it. Another great thing at home is animal walks. So, can you walk like a bear? Can you walk like a crab? This stuff is good for bearing weight on the hands and it puts a lot of deep pressure on their joints and can help them regulate. On that note, wall push ups also really good. So, have a designated area where they can put their hands, and this is great before dinner time, meal times, and you put their hands on a flat surface and push on the wall as hard as they can to try to push it over and count to 10. Or you can have them do other like push ups, so pushing themselves away from the wall. So either push it over or try to, break the wall down is a fun way to say it to the kids, or just like have them do actual push ups on the wall. Do require equipment, but can be good if you have it at home, like some sort of blanket swing or the ability to rock side to side. I mean, think about holding an infant baby. Like, how do you calm them down when they are feeling dysregulated or crying? It's like you rock them, right? And kids can learn how to do this soothing activity in different types of chairs or blanket swings, things like that, that can allow them to move, like some sort of flexible seating for them, right? And then yoga ball bouncing, similar, but more of a less of a regulating when you're like, you know, anxious or nervous, more regulating when you're excited. The repetitive up and down mimics a calming, steady heartbeat, and they are attracted to that motion and that regularity of the ability to create that like rhythm, right? And then trampolines, especially the mini ones that are safe. They can help them jump and do intense joint pressure on their legs, and it kind of runs all through their entire body, and then burn off excess of adrenaline, basically. Mm, One thing I really love is crash pads. So, like ways that kids can build like a some sort of you know fort. And so sometimes, energy levels peak into pure frustration, and the slow, methodical movements like a swing or even a yoga ball don't necessarily work. And let's say you don't have a trampoline or don't want a trampoline, crash pads using cushions and blankets and pillows and things like that around a couch or in the living room or beside a bed can be great ways to pile them up and then have the kids, run and jump into the pile. And it gives them like the whole body sensory burst of proprioception, and they like can regulate really fast doing things like that. And it's really fun for them, right? It gives this rapid release of physical energy and diffuses that immediate flight or flight response, like of being activated, right? And it can help them prepare for slower, more calming activities, like doing something like this an hour before bedtime, before dinner time, things like that can help a lot, right? And again, it's fun for the kids, and they have a blast doing it, and it's easy to get buy-in. So on that note of buy-in, some tips to be successful at integration is just being proactive with it, like reactive proprioceptive inputs are not as effective, right? Like, so making sure you're doing these things before dysregulation and before transitions, not during or after, right? So you really want to try to put this in the schedule before those like touch points that are hard, right? Next, keep it playful. Don't make it a punishment. Say things like, wow, look at those muscles. I need, somebody strong to help me push the laundry basket. Things that like build up their strengths, right? Not like, oh my gosh, you have so much energy. You need to do something else. Or like you need to, go outside and jump on the trampoline because you're too much right now. Like those are bad ways to message it. But like highlighting their strengths and then prompting them to go do something because of those strengths, like do wall push-ups, push a basket, jump on some blankets, like that keeps it playful. And yeah, every child is unique, so observing the impact of them, so pay attention to what works and what doesn't. Some kids calm down with wall push-ups, others might prefer wrapping themselves in a blanket and rolling around like a burrito, things like that, right? Like I would adjust accordingly to the child. Like some people like the deep pressure in the joints, so they would like jumping on things. Others just want to be squeezed, so they like more of the pressure or pushing against things. And with everything and anything, like modeling and co-regulation with their parents is one of the best ways to make anything successful. If they see you doing it and having fun, they're more likely to do it. So when they do this stuff, like don't hurt yourself, but join along if you can and you have the ability to, right? So like, can you do animal crawls? Can you do wall push-ups, things like that? Like make it a competition even if they're competitive, right? That can really help. Thanks for listening. Hopefully, you found this helpful, and hopefully, some of these tips will make transitions and emotional regulation at home a little easier. Thank you.